Good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's been a bit since I've given a service, and so with everything going on in these crazy times, I thought it would be a good chance to get back in and have a conversation about what's going on. Today, we're going to talk about maintaining hope in times of chaos. I think most of us would agree that the world today is quite chaotic and oftentimes can be a bit much to handle. So I know talking with my wife the other day, and even for myself, it's really hard to process everything that's going on right now. And it's something that can really make you feel overwhelmed and anxious. So I tried to think a bit about how do I cope with this and how do we cope with what's going on today? And how do we really make the world what we want it to be? And so I wanted to talk a bit about hope. Hope is one of the things I think that as humanists is central to our beliefs. We believe that humans can make the future better. And that itself is a hopeful ideal. So let's talk a bit about hope today and how we counter chaos and what we can do going forward. So chaos is really just the absence of order. If you're a physics nerd, entropy is chaos, right? It's the random distribution of things. And our society is something that's the opposite of chaos, though it might not seem like it today. Society is a highly complex structure, and it requires a lot of energy to maintain itself. And therefore, it's fairly easy for it to fall apart, particularly if it's not well maintained. So, how do we have hope when we don't see order in what's going on today? There's a prayer, it's called the Serenity Prayer, and it goes something along the lines of, may I have the serenity to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'm a big fan of that idea of balancing the serenity, courage, and wisdom and engaging in our everyday lives. So, how do we look at the world today and how do we process it in a way that we can make useful? How do we change the things we can? And how do we accept the things that we can't change? To me, there's the opposite of chaos is, of course, complexity. And the forces of chaos operate in this zero sum mindset. If I win, you have to lose. And if you lose, that means I win, although that's not always true. So war, this tribal in-group mindset is based on fear of not having enough, fear of scarcity. When realistically today, there's more than enough resources in the world for everyone to exist. And then another manifestation of the scarcity and forces of chaos is this mass consumerism and the exploitation of resources. And really hoarding is one way that you would explain it. Gathering all this stuff for me and my whatever it is, group, family, at the expense of others. And the pollution, destruction of the environment, right? So that's what forces of chaos do, right? They don't build systems, they tear them down, right? They exploit the things that are already there. So it's the opposite of that. Well, it's complex order. And that, like I said, requires energy. It requires us to input some energy into the system, right? We have to maintain it. Like any complex thing, you've got to do the maintenance or it falls apart. And so when we look at our complex system today, we're talking really about national governments, communities, systems of belief and interaction in civil discourse. Those are complex and they require our energy to maintain. So what do we do? And one of the things I want to start with is that you always have a choice. Many people, I think, are falling into this idea that, well, we don't have a choice. There are forces beyond our control. And I don't agree with that. Even if you have a gun to your head, you always still have a choice. That choice might end in, death, but you can choose to withstand. You can choose to resist. And you can always choose to do something. There's this idea that a teacher taught me about a long time ago called responsibility. And it's not just the word responsibility and who is to blame or who is responsible, but who is able to respond to a situation. Who can do something? And you can always take action to make a difference. And I think if we looked for those small ways to do that, we would find we have a lot more power than we think. One of those ways is to exercise individual power as a voter. Today, individuals are still the ones casting votes. And therefore, what happens is still our responsibility, and we are able to respond and make change. And ideally, we're voting for political power that diffuses the power instead of concentrates it. Power always corrupts. And it's something that we have to keep in mind when we're not just when we vote for this next election or in the next whatever it is in whatever country you happen to be in, but we have to be aiming for revising power structures to constantly disaggregate that power and diffuse it to the point where it can't be easily bought and sold. Don't complain about the way things are, right? I hear a lot of people complaining about, oh, this party, that party, the government, our system. Realistically, the voters are responsible for that system being in place. And so instead of complaining about the way things are, come up with the solutions to those problems, right? It's in my line of work, right? The idea is to come with solutions to problems, not just the problems. And to do that, you have to think past the problem. You've got to think beyond what the target of outrage is for today to say, what is it that's actually causing this and how do we get after fixing it? And then beyond that, give people, just the people around you, the benefit of the doubt. People are mostly good. And that's hard to see in the information environment in which we live in social media, where a combination of conflict, which sells clicks, our negativity bias as humans, and then also the availability bias, right? The things that we see all the time are negative. As humans, we're programmed to see negative things because we're programmed to detect threats. And therefore, we have this idea that everything's going to hell. And it's just not true. Most of us still have jobs that we go to. We still interact with our friends and our neighbors, even if they belong to different political parties. Things are generally still okay. But if that perception starts to slip and we start to believe that our neighbors are our enemies, then it becomes true. So we have to resist that idea. And so to me, when we start to think about what do, it all comes down to having a purpose and applying it daily. And so to me, being a humanist, right, thinking and acting in ways that promote humanity and promote humanity surviving and thriving. So again, we can do more than we think, which is this idea in social science called agency, right? The ability for someone or something to take action. And there's this particular idea when it comes to risk communication, that when we see a threat or a danger, we have two kind of courses of action. One course is to detect the danger, believe that we can do something about it, and then take an adaptive approach to fixing that problem. Or we detect a danger or a threat, and we don't know what to do about it, so we react in a way that helps only to mitigate our fear, but not to mitigate our danger. I think what we've seen a lot in the recent months is a lot of people are responding to their fear, not to the threat, right? The threat of COVID, the threat of political instability, all they're doing is lashing out on social media or trying to wear a mask or not wear a mask to control their fear, as opposed to doing, things that are based in science, like wearing the mask or maintaining social distancing or having conversations to get to know what the other side is actually talking about, as opposed to just denigrating something or someone as another. And so it's really important for us to not let our fear control us. And it doesn't matter what side you're on, there's fear being promoted on either side. Do you let your fear take hold of you, or do you maintain your humanity, your rationality, and realize that discourse, civil discourse, stability, kindness, those are the things that are far more important than any particular policy, any particular nominee for any particular office. And if we start to lose sight of those things and we get focused on these short-sighted conflicts that people put in front of us for the specific purpose of manipulating our fears, we will lose the democracy and the stability and the prosperity that we have. And so as individuals, it might seem overwhelming to say, well, how do I fix that? But individual action sets the culture and sets the precedent for what it is that we project in our own lives. If we are the example and others see what we do, it gives them something better to follow than that negativity that they're seeing everywhere else. So, what culture do you want to see? And once you have envisioned that culture, step back from all the negativity, really think about it, and then live that culture. Whether it's kindness, understanding, you have to be that example, even when it's hard, even when people are hateful. You have to be that example. And that might be in the short term a loss that you have to take. You might have to work harder than everyone else. You might have to not take advantage of some shortcut that other people do. But in the long run, promoting that culture, holding society accountable is going to give us the infinite gain of a better society. So when I look at this, to me, we have to combat the bystander effect. This is our problem, whether it's as a country, as voters, whether it's in your workplace in terms of culture, whether it's a problem that you see that no one else does. That's your problem, and own it. Again, complex systems don't simply exist without the energy that we as individuals put into them. Now, you've got to balance that responsibility with decision fatigue, right? We get tired of making decisions to do hard things. You've got to learn how to balance that and take care of yourself and be in it for the long run. You got to start small and work outward. What are the things that you can fix in your own life? I know for me today, I cleaned up around the house, and that gave me a sense of power and accomplishment that I just made my life, my world, my family's existence a little bit better. And then from there, I felt better about what's going on, and it allowed me to think outside of the short term or the very close targets. And then start to think beyond yourself, right? There's this idea within humanism that you start at the individual level with individual rights and responsibilities. And then the goal is to expand your sense of self to include your community, because humans can't exist without our community. And then you expand that community to include larger and larger amounts of humanity until you realize that all of humanity is part of your family. We're all stuck on this one rock in the middle of nowhere in the universe, and we aren't going to survive if we don't work together as one community. And then again, projecting that kindness, understanding, resolving conflict by using communication and setting that example that sets the culture. And finally, I just wanted to talk through what it is we stand for as humanists. We make the world more plentiful through invention and stewardship. We're skeptical and scientifically focused and focused on improving ourselves, our communities, and humanity. The goal isn't just to have a comfortable place to live today, but to make a better world for tomorrow. And we welcome anyone to humanism, because anybody can be humanist. Doesn't matter what religious faith or non-faith you are, because anybody can help humanity survive and thrive if they choose to. And in doing so, we build inclusive communities, and we do so deliberately because we understand that we're better together. And we examine our existence through science and skepticism. Doubt is our foundation, the idea that we should question and better understand who we are and why we're here. We pursue learning and progress. And importantly, we do so while letting go of being right, of shoving in the face of others our rightness. Because at some point, we'll all be wrong. We'll all make the wrong assumption. And so we have to be willing to question ourselves, be self-doubting and self-skeptical in terms of lording our, so-called knowledge over other people. And then finally, we focus on the infinite game over the finite one. The idea is that humanity survives and thrives as long as possible, all of infinity, if we figure out how to deal with entropy, right? And deal with chaos in the long term, in the physical sense. So how do we play this infinite game? We've got to let go of winning the short term, of the hoarding mindset, of pursuing chaos through our short-term goals. And finally, the idea is to be better and to be human. Thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you all again soon. And I hope this helps you to better process all of what's going on today and then build that better future for tomorrow. Thank you.